John, it's lovely to come and see your garden again.
Delightful to have you here.
Sonia, thank you very much for doing
Well, it's free, isn't it? I mean, you're giving me all your expert advice for free, and
I've got one or two bits of advice from you. I must get some advice on interviewing. You are the most respected interviewer, I would say. 33 years on the flagship radio programme. Yes, it was. And news and things like that. So tell me, John, what got you into broadcasting? At what age did you decide?
This is so embarrassing. I was 6 years old, all right. Kid,
yes.
Brought up in the slums of Splot in Cardiff. And,
with a Cardiff accent.
With a Cardiff accent, you talk like that, I act like a Cardiff accent. You know what I mean? Old kid, innit, eh?
I love
Anyway, that was how I used to talk before I was talking posh on the BBC.
Yes.
From the age of 6, because we didn't have any money, we didn't have any books in the house, but we could get comics, Superman comics from America, because the Americans sent them over by the shipload as ballast in the cargo ships after the war. And so you could buy them, you could buy the second-hand comics in British newsagents for a penny. You get your 6 for a penny. And so I read Superman comics for most of my childhood. And the thing about Superman, of course, is that in the real world, as it were, he was Clark Kent, and Clark Kent was a reporter. And in my 6-year-old brain, I must have figured, right, so you get to be a reporter, you get to be Superman, and you have the beautiful Lois Lane, who was Superman's girlfriend, as well. And all that must have implanted. Now, that's fine for a 6-year-old, but when you reach the age of,
15?
Yes, 20, 30, 40, 50. You'd have thought might have got out of that a bit, perhaps. Perhaps you'd have regarded that as being a bit silly. Anyway, the reality is, from that moment on, in other words, for my entire life, I have never, ever even considered doing anything else, ever. Now, how weird is that? I mean...
So weird.
It's
but
bizarre, isn't it?
It's so difficult to know what you want to do, but maybe take your lead from Superman comics.
Well, there you go. There you go. And when I left school at the age of 15, I became a reporter. 2 days after I left school, I was a reporter on the Penarth Times, which was not a massive multinational, it was a little seaside newspaper, but nonetheless, it was a job.
Yeah, and it was the first one, and you worked your way up pretty meteorically, really.
Well, I've never been out of work ever since then, so...
And how many American presidents have you interviewed?
4. Talked to, or interviewed,
Got
4
to know.
altogether. Got to know quite a bit, because I was in America for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Saw the downfall of Richard Nixon, of course. I was there in the White House when he became the first American president ever to resign. But I suppose the one I knew best was Ronald Reagan, who of course was a very famous film star. But
B
famous
movies.
B
movies.
Oh well, both. But mostly B movies. And governor of California, of course, and then ran to become president. I got to know him a bit during that time, and he was actually a very, very pleasant man. I mean, not, it has to be said, the brightest coin in the mint. I'm afraid, all the jokes about Reagan, more or less all true.
Yes. Oh dear.
And I do remember, because I wasn't persuaded about this. I thought, no, he's probably much brighter. Anyway, I was with him in New Hampshire, and we were at one of those sort of town hall meetings, where the presidential candidate stands up on the stage and everybody asks him questions. But it's all heavily orchestrated. They don't leave anything to chance at those things. So every question, the aides, the White House aides, or not White House in those days, but the candidate's aides, would select Mrs. Smith to do this, and then the next question, the next question. And Reagan would trot out the answers because he'd been properly prepped. He knew the answer to question number 1 was going to be whatever, and then to another. On this particular morning, the first question was asked, which he answered. The second question, the woman who was supposed to answer it was terribly, terribly nervous at the last minute and didn't want to get up and so the woman in the next row, or whatever she was, popped in. So she answered that, or rather asked. She asked that question.
And he got the wrong answer.
He gave his second answer to the second question, but he'd been asked the third question. Yes. And do you know what was interesting about it? Nobody gave a damn. Nobody said, president and he can't even know which... They all thought, oh, that's old Ronnie for you. Those were the days of innocence, in a way. Yeah.
But it does show you had a good memory. That's one
way of putting it. That's one way of putting it.
What everyone loves about you, John, is you would always interview someone and you wanted to get the truth out of them. And you doggedly, the Rottweiler, we called you the Rottweiler because you didn't roll over and lie down, you actually gave it to them. And so I love the story. I mean, obviously I've enjoyed listening to thousands of interviews that you've done, but what I love here is the way you're a bit like that with your garden when you were caught stealing leaves. Tell us a story.
That's libelous. Stealing leaves, how dare you, madam.
That steals leaves to use in his own garden. And I think that's highly laudable because leaves are fantastic. And they're wonderful for the garden, and the depths that you will go to, the lengths that you will go to get your free leaves. But tell me that story, because that is amusing.
Well, it is true that, as you know, the house is in a square where there are lots of big gardens and lots of trees all around the place. And every autumn, the men from the council would come and sweep them all up and put them in bags and put them at the corner there and wait for them to be collected. And sometimes they'd be there for ages and ages. And I got to thinking, all those leaves there waiting to be collected, why don't I have them for my garden? So I used to go out at dead of night, actually that's not true, in the middle of the day, and I would just drag the bags here and make leaf mould from them and all that. And then I got snitched on by somebody, probably a jealous neighbour.
Jealous of your fine trees?
Jealous of my, precisely. And Jeremy Vine, my old mate on Radio 2 as he is now, rang me up and said, look, the papers are onto you as a leaf thief. Really? Yeah, you know, you're stealing the council's leaves. Do you want to come on the program? I said, no. And he said, all right, well, we'll follow up the story and I'll get back to you. And he did get back to me. And he said, we've got the chief executive of the council, Hammersmith and Fulham Borough Council, who's going to come and do an interview. I said, Anyway, I waited for the interview came, and Jeremy said to whoever he was, the council or whatever, or the chief executive, what about this Humphrys man stealing your leaves? And he said, you know what? We owe him a debt of gratitude. A public-spirited citizen is what he is. If he hadn't taken the leaves, we'd have had to get them recycled. He's done us all a favour. And I can tell you, I was just so pleased.
So your halo is shining all around. Oh.
Rewarded for my
diligence.
Okay, we'll settle for that. Public-spiritedness.
Public-spirited
How
diligence.
about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much, John. That's
my
great.
pleasure.
Yeah.
And thank you for all your free advice.
Pleasure. Anytime.
Oh, careful.